Welcome to another episode of the Founder to Founder podcast. My name is Aaron Spivak, born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, here in Miami, and I've built multiple 7, 8, and 9-figure brands and recently just had the third largest D2C transaction in Canadian history. But today is not about me, because today you get to listen to another incredible story of the founder behind the founder, and we get to dive deep into what it takes to build something incredible. It's not always the tips and tricks, it's how you go about your life. So join us for another incredible podcast at the Founder to Founder. Gary Lipovertsky, man, come on, let's go. I'm so happy. Dude, last time we did a podcast was on your podcast. We spoke for literally 3 hours.
Yeah.
And we went through so many different realms of life. And this time you're coming on my podcast.
Yes.
So welcome to the Founder to the Founder podcast. And it's meaningful that you're here, because I know you just flew in from Brazil, which we might get into. But ultimately, I want to know, right out the gates, you've done so much, and we'll get into it throughout, but I want to know the driving force. If you were to look back and look at your journey, right? You've sold businesses, you've raised money, you've had so many different successes, you've moved countries, you've done so much.
I had 3 kids.
And had 3 kids, and married. What is it that you think, if you're looking back, led you to this position to where you are today?
So initially it was the fear of being poor all the time, of staying poor all the time, and the fight or flight survival mode. That was kind of the first thing. The second motivation was the fear of mediocrity, right? And then later on, the third motivation and the current motivation is the constant need for progress. I'm like a progress junkie. I'm like an addict. That to me, if I'm not progressing in all realms and everything that I do, I just feel something's wrong, something's missing. It bothers me.
So let's go back to that. You just said you were poor. Fear of being poor.
Yeah.
How did you grow up?
So I was born in communist Soviet Union in 1973. I'm 52 years old. And in 1976, we left. There was a lot of kind of political reasons about why we left. There was a mass exodus of Jews during that time. The Soviet Union had this, they kind of planted their flag and were like, we don't like you guys, we don't like Jews, so nobody else can leave, because it was Iron Curtain. It was an era of history where Russia was not Russia, but former Soviet Union was like North Korea is today. And they said, everybody has to stay, but the Jews can go.
The Jews can leave, everyone else has to stay.
Everyone,
wow.
So there was a mass exodus. Most Jews went to Israel. There was a period of time, there was a 6-month period of time where there was this buffer zone, which was a neutral country, which was Italy. So for 6 months, I was 2.5 years old, my family and I, we were in Italy. And so during that time, my father heard about Canada, and he's like, you know what, I want to go to a country where my son won't be in the army under any circumstances, whether it's the Israeli army or the Soviet army or whatever it is. So then we moved to Canada. And arriving in Canada, we had no money. My parents didn't speak English. No contacts, no nothing. Canada was gracious enough to let us in. We were refugees. And that was kind of my early life. And the thing is I grew up with this notion that we were going to be on the street all the time. And my dad is the product of, a very oppressive, kind of regime at the time, which was the Soviet Union, from he was born in 1940 and through those few decades. So he's always living in fear. He's always living in fear that it's going to be taken away, that we're going to be in the street. And so that really kind of seeped into my upbringing. And it was just it was tough, right? It was a difficult early life that I feel like I had. And I'm not complaining about it, because I'm certainly not the only one. There were a ton of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people in this exact same scenario. So certainly not unique. And that's how I grew up. I grew up with, my dad being kind of scared all the time. And
but at what point did you say, all right, I got to take this into my own hands? At what age, at what point were you like, I'm going to have a different life than the one I know around me?
I never knew I'd have a different life. I just knew I was on my own. And when I say on my own, I had my family, I had their support, but I knew I couldn't count on them to take care of me. Forget about trying to get wealthy, forget about trying to have more. I knew past a certain point, past I was, when I started thinking about it probably when I was 12 or 13.
Wow.
And I realized that past 17, 18, No one's helping me out, because even at 13, no one was like giving me money. There was no like allowance. There was nothing like that. I went to go work at McDonald's when I was 15 years old.
Right.
That was my first job. So yeah, to me, I always knew that I'd have to take care of it on my own. And it scared the shit out of me. It really did. And I still have trauma from it.
Right, but like I feel like, you know, some people say entrepreneurs are born, some say they're created, some say you can nurture entrepreneurship. So many times I speak to entrepreneurs, specifically on the pod, and we try to figure out like what actually got you started, right? Because there's so many different types of entrepreneurs, but I find the common denominator is there was a point in time where there was a subconscious or conscious decision. Like at 15, you're working at McDonald's.
Yeah.
At what point did you say, all right, I'm gonna go get a job that's bigger, that's paying me more, I gotta go build something for myself? Or did you just fall into entrepreneurship? Like, what was your first taste of saying, this is my path?
So what happened was I went to university, and I got a degree in geology, which is like a degree in nothing. It's
degree in these plants. Yeah,
sure. It was a degree in nothing.
Biology or geology.
It was just to get it was just to get the piece of paper to get my bachelor's degree. And I got that, and I started working. I had like some really odd jobs. My first job was like at Future Shop. If you probably
remember Future Shop.
So that was the first time I was ever exposed to computers. I was 23 years old. I'd never touched a computer. All my essays in school were written by hand.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. That's how old I am. And so, you know, I worked at Future Shop, and then I quit that. I was making $18,000 a year. I quit that. I worked for like a hardware company, and I was selling like computers in bulk into like a life insurance company, like the most boring job in the world. It was like spreadsheets. They fired me from there. So I wasn't very employable. And then I worked it was my first taste of internet marketing for this company that sold advertising to schools, so to like universities and colleges, and I did that for a bit. And I had gotten up to $30,000 a year, which was like
It's a big deal.
That was a big deal. I was probably about 26 at the time, and I was like, you know, to me, like I was good because I could afford my shitty little car and my shitty little basement apartment, and I was good. And so to answer your question, kind of when that first step of entrepreneurship was when my university roommate came to me. And he was already he had gone on to get an MBA. I wasn't a strong enough student to do that, and quite frankly, I didn't have the money to do it. So he was working at like one of the big finance firms, and he didn't like it there either. Although he was doing reasonably well for like a kid his age, our age at the time. And he came to me and he said, "Hey, let's start an internet company together." And I'm like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. And he said, let's put restaurant menus on the internet. And I said, okay, great. So I went and I quit my job. Prior to quitting my job, I talked to my dad, and my dad said to me, he goes, "Look, what are you doing? Why are you quitting your job?" And I said, "Well, I'm going to start this business." He goes, "You're not an entrepreneur. It's not for you. Like, you don't know what do you know about business." But my dad was he felt he was protecting me by telling me like everything is impossible. Like that was his thing. It's like play it safe, do the basics, and just get by, because that's like success. You know what I mean? And so that was kind of what I grew up with, right? That was the notion. And so he said to me, "You have a job that makes $2,500 a month. You know, after tax, you're making $2,000 a month." He goes, "You're going to start a business? What business are you going to start? Where are you going to make that kind of money?" And there's this constant like narrative that me and my dad had. He's like, "What if you fail?" I'm like, "But what if I succeed?" And it was that "what if I succeed" statement that I made to him, that was my turning point. So then I went ahead, I quit my job. He was still telling me this is a mistake, what you're doing is wrong. And I started that company, when I was about 26 or 27 with my buddy. This was like in 1999. And that was it. And then from there, one thing led to another, and here I am.
You just said something insanely profound that I was just in Dubai literally 48 hours ago.
I saw that.
And it was a conference, 700 founders, but they were all between like 18 and 22, and from all over the world. It was so impressive. And one thing that I was talking about on my keynote is something you just brought up, is throughout our journey, specifically in our youth, there's somebody, have you ever seen the meme of the elephant with the rope around its foot?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
And it's this massive elephant.
Yeah, people have told me this in the past, and that's spot on. You're describing my situation.
Exactly, right? There's the big elephant, and it's like, why is this big elephant not just take a step? Because an elephant can pull the tree with it. Actually, the rope will probably break.
Absolutely.
And you just described, and the answer to it is the rope is instilled in us in our youth.
Yeah.
Your dad, for true or false, is your hero, is the person that's supposed to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Who's guiding you. But you just described something that most people don't do ever.
Because they don't know. So that rope, sorry, I want to interject for a second. That rope, what happens is when the elephant is a baby, this is the story.
That's where it's created.
It's when the elephant is a baby, it doesn't have the strength to pull that rope out of the ground because the rope's in the ground with a stake, right?
Exactly.
It's like a metal stake. And so it tries and it tries and it tries. And as a baby, eventually it gives up trying because it doesn't have the strength. So it's like, that's it, I'm stuck. So now the elephant's full grown. It's obviously, it's strong. It can just take a step and the stake's going to go flying out of the ground. But as soon as it feels that little bit of tension on that stake, it remembers the time and the conditioning that it had, that it's impossible to move that thing. So it stays put.
So that's what I want to double click into, because so many people that are listening to this, even people who actually have started businesses, that rope exists for all of us. We all have limiting beliefs, and we have to constantly challenge them. But you just described at 26, your dad reminding you, and it was with good faith, like he just wanted to protect you.
Yeah.
But you said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyways. I'm going to take this step. I'm going to rip the rope. What was it? Was it an accident? Was it your friend pushing you? What do you think it was?
So I want to say my dad, I just want to clear it up. My dad passed away 6-7 years ago. He wasn't a bad guy. My dad was a product of his environment.
Right.
He was so beat down, and people of that era, in those circumstances, in those countries, they were really beat down. So I don't want to make it sound like my dad was like some kind of a loser. My dad was he was a product of his situation. Mm-hmm. For me, I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell you. It's like, I think it was just this fear of mediocrity. It was this, because at that point I didn't feel like a failure, even though like by today's measures, if you're 26, 27 years old making $30K a year, a lot of people would look at you as a failure.
Do you think if your friend just happened to go to a different university and that never happened,
then I don't know that I would have become I don't know. Look, it's hard to
say.
It's hard to imagine what an alternate timeline would have looked like. I don't know. But one thing I will say is that him coming to me with this, and at that point, like I saw him as like more elevated than me, because even though we started in the same place and we were college roommates for 4 years, he went on to get his MBA. And to me, that was like a big prestigious thing, and that was a goal I didn't think I could ever achieve. And the fact that he came to me, I felt flattered that he thought that I was somebody worthy to become a business partner, to create a business with. But one of the reasons he did, and I think this is a skill that people should have, is, and this might be taking just a bit of a tangent and we'll come back, is the fact that because I was a good-natured kid, I had kind of, earned his friendship, and we had earned each other's friendships, and that was the reason he came to me. So I think a lot of it also comes from like who you are and your kind of morals and values and how you treat the rest of the world around you.
People often underestimate the power of just being a good person.
You're absolutely right.
And the reason why I double clicked into that is because what we need is to surround ourselves with people who believe in us. Because it sounds like, him coming to you and asking you to start a business, you're like, you know what? Wow, I respect you so much, and you see that in me.
But I didn't believe in myself at the time.
But he believed in you.
But he believed in me, yeah.
And that's who we need. And that's why I speak so often about environment and all that. But I guess my next question is, obviously environment had a big impact in your life.
Yeah.
But moving forward, you start this business, you leave this job that was pretty safe pay at the time. $2,000 was a good amount of money. Yeah. It's like today making maybe $4 to $5, right? Which is, some people consider a safe income. You can pay rent and some bills.
Right. Some people who haven't seen the shit now that I've seen, but yeah, I agree.
I'm going to get into exposure, right?
Yeah.
What would you say, at what moment in that first journey, because there was many journeys since, at what moment in that first journey did you say to yourself, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I can do this?
I don't think there, I don't know. It's tough for me to answer that question, because that particular partner, I was with him for so long that I didn't believe that I had the entire skill set that was required to be an entrepreneur without him. Eventually I did branch off and I started my own business, and like my own business outside of the business with him. I actually started with my wife, Valeria. And I feel only at that point that now I feel that I can do everything. Meaning I may not be able to do everything operationally, like I can't edit video. I could figure it out, but I can't do it today. But now I know all of the facets of business that are required in order to run it. So I feel like I truly felt like an entrepreneur, and that's associated kind of with the word independence, because you have to be independent and you have to be able to kind of figure out everything along the way. Once I made that break with him and started this business with Valeria, because he was my stake in the ground. He was that rope. You know what I mean? And that wasn't that long ago. That was like 9 years ago, right? Because I felt like the things that he knew how to, he was like super analytical, super bright guy, super analytical, great with like accounting and finance, and do you know what I mean? And I wasn't. I'm more of like the other side of the brain, you know, that artsy brain that I can
art and science.
Yeah, I'm more on that side. So I felt like a true entrepreneur once I was able to break from that situation, partner with Valeria, and the deficiencies that I have, that I still have, but now I don't. To me, they're not deficiencies. They're just people. They're just roles that I need to hire for. That's when I felt truly whole as an entrepreneur. When I understood that I can do it all now. That's when.
So you guys obviously worked together for a long time.
Yeah.
You've done multiple businesses.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize I'm going to go and work with Valeria?
Well, when Valeria's $10,000 hit our bank account from a brand partnership. So to me, that was proof of concept. So I was actually in between businesses. I had a business also with him that we had started, and I was monetizing social media like Facebook pages. And I had a website, so that resulted in a viral news website that I had. It had 200 million like sessions, meaning visitors per month. We were like in the top 100 websites in the world. Wow. So I was doing that with him. That got shut down because we were in this kind of loose partnership with Facebook. And this was right after Zuckerberg got called to Capitol Hill from the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And so the department who we were working with at Facebook, they contacted us and they said, hey, we need to talk. It was like a we need to talk moment. So they invited us to New York. We flew to New York and we sat down at Facebook, and they said, you guys got to stop doing this. They said, you're done. I'm like, wow. I go, what do you mean we're done? Right? And they said 20% of Facebook traffic goes through your website. And since Mark just got back about this Cambridge Analytica thing, we can't have one entity have that much access to our users.
Oh my God. So what was this website? Like, how did you get 20% of all the activity?
This website, I'll tell you how I did it. This website was, it was a viral news website. So I had 32 writers, and every day they sat in a room and they made content. They wrote articles, right? They wrote articles about varying shit.
What year was this?
14 to 17, maybe 13 to 17.
Wow, okay.
No, 13, like 13 to 17.
So this is years before you started.
Valeria and I started in 2017.
Okay, so it's 4 or 5 years before you're already hacking or like figuring out how to go viral in a different way.
Yeah, there's other shit.
Yeah,
but
so
yeah,
you're essentially creating viral news.
Yeah, so we created these articles, and that's when I got really good at headlines. And a lot of that, the skill set that I built there, really, we're to this day, like we're using it. And, I helped train our current staff on a lot of the things that I learned there, and that's to do with like headline optimization. That's to do with like, creating titles that are not clickbait, but that create excitement and that kind of manage the expectation of the reader once they get into the article. Clickbait is, sorry to take such a tangent, but clickbait is the type of thing where it's over-promising, or it's promising it's setting a completely different expectation of what the piece of content will provide you. And that's whether it's an article or a video or whatever it may be. It's a completely different expectation as compared to when someone actually goes into that piece of content, whether it's a YouTube video or an article, and it's completely something different. It's a sensational title for the purpose of getting the click. So I'm not a big believer in that. But anyways, that viral news website that I had, we were writing about 30 articles a day, and each one of those articles had a series of display ads in them, and it was like this whole like real-time bidding situation. So they were fully optimized. So when somebody went in there, from the ads that we were displaying, it was fully optimized from a revenue perspective. So then we would create 30 of those a day, and every day we'd create 30, 20 days a week. So we were creating 600 articles a month.
Wow.
Right? 30 articles a day times 20 days, 20 work days in a month, we were creating 600 articles. 600. So we had them banked. So at one point we had thousands of these articles in a database. And so we partnered with about 1,000 Facebook pages, and those Facebook pages would log in every day. They would search by keyword for articles that were relevant to whatever their theme was. They would look at the new stuff on a daily basis, and then they had access to all of our archives. They would pick the article, they would grab a link, it would generate a UTM code, so they had their own unique tracking link, and they took that link and they published it to their Facebook page. And then we helped train them in terms of how to editorialize it, because on Facebook, you can drop the link in, but then you have area for a copy. So, you know, they were adding their perspective on whatever the article was about. So then they would drop that link, and then we would do a revenue share with them on that link. And it was completely cool with Facebook. Like this was okay in terms of their terms and conditions, but realistically, it wasn't what they had. They didn't expect it. They didn't like. It was a use case that they didn't design the platform to do, right? So we were doing it for a couple of years, and after this whole thing happened with Cambridge Analytica, they, you know, and we made those changes. They needed to make the change. They then changed their policy because of us, and they said you can't share.
Change Facebook's policy.
Yeah, they said you can't. Wow. They called it manufactured sharing. They said you can't incent people to share news articles. You can't do this revenue share thing with them, which is legit. If I had been Facebook and I saw this going on, I'd probably say, yeah, like this isn't a great. It probably wasn't the best user experience holistically for the entire platform. So I could see, but we didn't know it would blow up the way it did. Like 1,000 pages is serious. We started with Hollywood celebrities. So I had an office in LA, and I would fly to LA. I would be in LA from Monday to Friday. This is when our kids were really small.
Wow.
And Valeria was waiting for me in Toronto with Jake and Ben, our two oldest boys. And I'd come home for the weekend. And I did that for 6 months.
Wow.
And I have a funny story about meeting Mike Tyson. So I met with Mike, great guy. We worked with Lil Wayne. I never met Lil Wayne directly. We worked with a bunch of like cool Hollywood celebrities. And then what I realized was there was a whole cohort of Facebook pages all over the world, like in India and in Pakistan. And these are independent people just working from home. A lot of them are young guys. And they were creating these interest pages. So there was photography or short form video that they were creating original content themselves. But they had a challenge monetizing their content because there wasn't a lot of monetization options on Facebook. Like, you know, these weren't accounts that you could build like merch or like there wasn't, you know. So we were able to. They tried doing it themselves, creating these pages and you know with the advertising. And by the way, like everything was super legit. Like the articles were real articles. Someone could argue that the writers that I had weren't like Pulitzer Prize winning writers, which they weren't. They were young kids, like journalism school, you know, grads. So yeah, you can make that. But when these pages tried to do it themselves, it was just too difficult for them. It was too difficult to get the writers. It was too difficult to figure out the monetization because there was some complexity there. So anyways, that was the business. So back to what we were talking about. So in 2017, when the first check came from a brand, so that had shut down because of that, you know, we need to talk conversation with Facebook.
Facebook makes a business decision.
Yeah,
business is done.
Correct. Wow. Which sucked.
Yeah.
But it was almost like it was serendipitous because literally when that happened, I was actually pretty calm about it. I was looking back, I think Gary from, you know, 20 years ago would have like freaked out, right?
And how old were you at the time when this happened?
This was 9 years ago, so I was 43.
Right.
Yeah. So there's another funny story there, and I'll tell you in a second. So Valeria started doing this. And so I was like looking at this, and then 10,000 came in, and I didn't know where it came in from. So the last person I asked was Valeria, because I didn't even know that she knew where we banked. She was 26 years old with two little kids.
Wait, I got a question. How you knew she was making content? Like, this wasn't her first video.
I knew she was making content, but I'd never seen a dime from it.
But for how long was she making content?
I don't remember. Not long.
Not long.
Maybe a year, but when I say a year, it was like she'd make a piece of content once a week.
So she was like casually doing content.
She was dabbling.
And I don't know where you see bank account 10K.
I see 10K come into the bank.
Wow.
So I didn't even know that she knew where we banked. So I was like, what?
Where's this money?
I called the bankers. Well, we had a relationship with the bank. And I said, where's this from? And they're like, it's somewhere in the United States. The United States? Well, why is anybody from America sending? I thought it was me. Why are they sending me 10,000? Never in my wildest dreams did I think somebody would send my wife $10,000, right?
Wow.
So I'm like, fucking, in passing, I'm talking to Valeria. That's the funniest thing, you know, like this wire hit her account. It's 10K. I don't know where it's from. She was so cute about it. She wasn't smug about it, but she was like, oh, because she hadn't contributed yet financially. And I never expected her to. It wasn't something that I went in, you know, marrying Valeria, like what she's going to do. It didn't cross my mind what she would do for a living. And so she's like, that was mine. Like somebody, I'm go, huh? Somebody, what? What did they pay you for? She goes, oh, it's to feature their probiotic in my content. I go, your content? I thought that she was just, you know, kind of messing around. And so she goes, yeah. I'm like, go show me what you're doing. And so she showed me her Instagram, which I wasn't that familiar with Instagram at the time. And she showed me her YouTube, which I was more familiar with, but still not at the level I am now. And she showed it to me, and I'm like, oh shit, this is like very serious media, I started looking at some of the data. I started looking at click-through rates, retention numbers, how much time was being spent in some of her long-form content. Early on, the insights on Instagram allowed me to see kind of how many people it was reaching, engagement numbers. And I was like, and the audience was it's like tens of thousands, right? And I said, this is real media. Can I partner with you? And so she's like, this isn't a business, Gary. Like, what are you talking about? I said, no, this is a business. I go, you're gonna be a household name. I go, you're gonna be like an Oprah of your generation, She goes, you're a lunatic. And I go, no. I go, just give me a chance. Let me try. Like, let's try this together. She goes, okay. I go, where do you spend your time? Explain your day to me. And she goes, I spend an hour a day in front of the camera, and I spend 9 hours a day editing. I go, editing? How do you know how to edit? She goes, I went on YouTube and I did a search for how to edit video.
Wow.
So now I'm like, shit, like I have like this savant, this genius on my hands, which I didn't know that she was a genius, right? On top of everything else that she is. So I was like, okay. I go, let's hire a videographer, and I want you, instead of being in front of the camera only an hour a day, I want you in front of the camera 5-6 hours a day. And then the rest of the time, I want you, like the other 3 or 4 hours, I want you to hone your craft, and whatever the content that she was making content about, like she was doing recipes and like health stuff and some fashion, I said, and like learn your topics better so then you can produce better content. So the goal of hiring the videographer was for Valeria to produce more content in terms of volume and better content in terms of quality. That's what I wanted her to do. And as a result, she like 6x'd the volume of content. And then my prediction came true, where because she did that, there was more and more, first of all, the audience started growing, the community started growing, and also we started getting much more inbound interest from advertisers. And there was an inflection point there. I'll reference back to my dad, and I'll tie it together when Valeria made a statement to me. And she said to me, when I said, let's hire the videographer, I said, let's hire the videographer. And she said, well, how much will that be? And I said, I don't know, maybe $4,500 a month. She goes, what if we don't have more brand deals that'll pay for that videographer? Right. And we'll run out of this $10,000 that we invested into, or not that we invested, that we got from the business. Because I was saying to her, the premise is we're going to take this $10K and hire a videographer.
We're going to invest it.
We're going to invest it. And she goes, what if we don't get any more brand deals and we burn through this $10K? Then what? Because I'm saying we have to hire a full-time person, commit to a full-time person. So my response to her was the same thing I said to my dad when I was quitting my $30,000 job. I said, she says, what if we don't get the deals? I said, what if we do? That what if we do is the initial spark and premise of Valeria Inc.
Wow.
Of reaching hundreds of millions of people a month. I said, what if we do? And I think that's the takeaway. The what if we do? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, what you just did is what I think a lot of people do, is we often become the person that we needed when we were starting out. And what you just did was recognize a limiting belief in Valeria early on, like you can, because was instilled in her, and we all have that rope.
Yeah.
And what your business partner did with you and instilled that belief in you, you then went and did it, and you said, wait a second, there's no rope here.
So it was all meant to be, right? That experience I have with that business partner, I'm not vilifying the guy, he's a good dude, right? It just
that's the magic.
That was my limiting belief. He didn't do it to me.
Right.
But yeah, that's the magic. It's taking that experience, that I think 15 years that I worked with him. Yeah. And as soon as I heard that, I corrected it. If I had somebody correct me, then maybe my life would have taken a different path. Although my life is fucking great. I can't complain about anything. But I want to mention something else to Valeria's credit. When that viral news website got shut down that we were doing, we had, right before that, committed to a new house. So we had bought a new house.
Like a bigger, more expensive house.
Yeah, and not a cheap house. It was like an expensive house.
I remember this, actually.
I told you this story.
I remember, like, it was in Thornhill, right?
Richmond Hill.
Richmond Hill. It was a bigger home. I remember.
Brand new from the builder. We gave a deposit.
Yes.
And I was declaring an income in order to qualify for the mortgage. Now, we had a substantial net worth at the time, so we were okay because I had already exited a company prior to that in 2012. But we were still at risk because in order to get a mortgage, we had to show income to the bank. It wasn't the net worth statements were irrelevant. They needed to see income, like declared actual income, right? And so I was, we were doing okay. I had declared an income. So in between when we put the deposit on this house, like a sizable deposit, I think it was like $500,000.
Wow.
Right? We put down on the house.
That's way more than the 20% at the time, maybe, no?
Well, no, the house was It was a more expensive house.
Wow.
So we put down $500,000, and I remember putting it down and knowing it's non-refundable.
Wow.
And my income gets cut off. The income that I can show on paper gets cut off.
Wow.
So I'm like, that's a shitty situation, and I was a little anxious about that. And right then and there, that first $10,000 check came in, and then our hypothesis on that investment in the videographer paid off, and then it started really coming in. And so we were able to, in that period of time that it took to build the house, in that 1.5 to 2 years, Valeria basically saved our asses. Meaning we would have been okay, but it would have been a loss. It would have been not good. But she saved our asses because of her. 26 years old, because of her, because she was doing that, we were able to then show an income to be able to close on the house, to be able to close on the mortgage. I could have reshuffled some stuff. It would have been a pain in the ass.
Wow.
Right? But it was like, so you got to hand it to her. And that's like that's a whole other conversation about like the magic of being a content creator. But
wow.
But Valeria really saved the day. And I give her credit for that all the time.
Do you think it's, and this is a little bit of a pivot, but
Sure.
we talk about this a lot because the Founder to Founder podcast is, of course, these incredible stories of what it takes to get to where you are. People getting a little bit vulnerable and saying like, hey, Valeria saved the day.
Yeah. That's not vulnerable. I'm fucking proud of her.
I love that.
Yeah.
And it's the truth though,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
But I think if you look at it in a holistic way, you were 18 years older. You just said like
I'm still 18 years old.
you're still 18 years older, right? You're aging like wine, so good for you.
Yeah, thanks.
And you had this like, you just said it earlier. You said, when we got married, I never expected anything from her. That's a very powerful thing to say when it comes to just the dynamics of any relationship, right? And that's a very traditional relationship. And is that what you expected when you originally got married? You said, you know what, like this is going to be a traditional setup where everything will be on me? Or in the back of your head, where you're like, oh, eventually she'll do something?
It never crossed my mind what she would do for a living. It just never crossed my mind at all. Look, it's not that I didn't go in there saying I'm traditional. I'm not traditional. All I knew was that I love this girl. That's it. That's all I knew. So to me, whether she, I don't care what she, I didn't care what she did professionally. All I cared about was her happiness. That's it. Then I remember on our wedding day, and I got up on stage and I said, I'm making a promise to you that your happiness is my mission. It's my priority, it's my mission, and that's it. That's my life.
Wow.
Right? And so to me, part of that wasn't like, what are you going to do for a living? I just figured I'd take care of it. I don't know, because I'm a man. I don't know. That's what men do. I don't know. And if she...
What men are supposed to do.
I agree. Yeah, men, I think that's what men are supposed to do. To me, I wanted Valeria to have the option to do whatever she wanted to do. If she wanted to do something as a hobby, cool. If she wanted to work, she could. It wouldn't be necessary from a financial perspective. I'll put it to you this way. If she had gotten like a job, and she didn't like it, or somebody mistreated her there, I would just tell her to leave.
Right.
I don't know. It's never something I relied on. It's never something I considered.
That's so magical.
But it's not like a macho thing. It's not like, I don't necessarily think that that's for everybody. That's just for me. I'm not advocating this thing saying if you're a real man,
right,
don't let your wife work. I'm just saying do whatever the fuck you want. I'm telling you this is what I do. For me, I don't know. I see things different. I don't know.
I think that one thing that I admire that you do so often is you're so quick to implement. Like you just described getting one deal in the bank account and saying, boom, we got a business, let's hire an editor, let's go. We have opportunity here, execute.
Yeah.
Do you know how many times, like my mom, for example, had a couple of videos go viral. Someone like sent her like $1,500 to make a post. My next step wasn't, let's do 10 more videos. My next step was, that's awesome, you made $1,500, good work. But you saw the opportunity and you pounced on it. And it seems to be just knowing you for a while, something that you just do often. And a lot of creators out there, and we'll get into the creator method. Yeah. The first thing they do, I mean, you have an 18-person team.
Yeah, 20 now.
20 people, like that's very uncommon. Why was that the solution for you? Like why did you immediately say, you know what, we're gonna build this in-house? A lot of people, they rely on agencies or managers, and there's so many different ways to skin the cat. But when it comes to the way you approach business, you went right to like, let's build the foundation.
I think there's a lot of questions there, Aaron. I'm not sure which one. I'm eager to answer them, but give me one question. I'm going to answer it because you've said a lot and I want to dive into stuff, but give me one thing. Like, you're asking me why I chose to.
Do you think that has to be the case? If I'm a creator, do you think that I need to think about it as formal as a business that you created? Like, you formalized it almost right away.
It depends what you want.
They want to take it on as a career.
So if it's a career and if they're developing their personal brand, then you have to ask the question is, what are their monetization goals? So if they need to monetize immediately versus am I building this asset out, which is my personal brand, over a long period of time to be able to, to me, the proof of concept that $10,000 was a proof of concept. It was a proof of concept that someone's willing to pay for this media. And it wasn't like a hokey company that was like some foolish startup. This was a real company.
Right.
So to me, that was enough of a proof of concept. So I understood, like, in the businesses that I had before, like, if you wanna build scale, then you have to put in structure. So you put in structure by putting in people, training them, and creating process. So that's it. I mean, to me, it was and continues to be uncommon in the creator space. There are agencies, and I'm not opposed to agencies, like, let's say for monetization, but the problem, I was just having this conversation today, I was consulting someone, but like, with agencies, when you're farming out, let's say you're a creator and you're farming out your inbox, regardless of whatever stage you're at, the problem is that when you give your inbox to an agency, you now added another kind of pool of competitors. And what I mean by that is that you've got your first pool of competitors on level one, where agencies are looking at just overall globally at all the different influencers. They're choosing one. Then what happens is, if you already won that lottery and you got a brand to reach out to you who wants to pay you, whether it's for like a brand like integration, like their product integration, any kind of sponsorship, a speaking engagement. But if you now have an agency, they're emailing, you've made the choice to direct it to an agency. Well, guess what? That agency represents another 50 people. So now you're competing on tier 2. Even though it's your relationship, technically you own that relationship because they came in from seeing your body.
You're saying that agency will receive an inbound request and then potentially sell other clients.
Of course, because if they can't close it with you, why would they lose that revenue? They need to get their 10 or 20%. So they're going to go to someone else. Now, the flip side of it is that they're doing the same thing on the inbounds that are coming in from other people. Right. So their pitch to you, and I'm not shitting on agencies, it's just not for me.
That's just the business.
That's just their business, and that's cool. But their pitch to us back in 2012, when I took a couple of those meetings for fun, because I just wanted to learn how they operate, right? And I wanted to show Valeria that nobody in the room is going to sell it like I'm going to sell it, because I was the initial salesperson, right? And the initial accountant and all that stuff. To me, that model seems there's a conflict of interest there. They're not going to represent me because I'm competing holistically with all the other creators in the world, but I already won that. I already won the lead. Now I'm giving the lead. Now I'm volunteering to compete with your other 50 people that you rep. That to me is problematic.
So if I'm a creator and I'm just starting out, I have monetization goals that are super ambitious.
Yeah.
Like I want this to be my career. And I find, specifically from the brand side, working with a lot of creators in my past and even now, sometimes they have like a full-time job and they're doing the creation stuff. Their goal though is to be a full-time creator. They want to grow.
Yeah. They want robust monetization.
What would be the first step for them?
You got to go to the school of execution. You got to execute for long periods of time. If you're lucky and if you've got a natural skill and you can build audience right away, build community right away, you might have some early stage monetization, but you got to go to the school of execution. And the school of execution, which I just came up with as we're sitting here.
This is genius.
Yeah, the school, I don't know if it's genius, but the school of execution, and the way to learn how to do this is by doing it. Like, you can study this all you want. You can look at theory all you want, but with content creation, you're going to look at theory for such a long period of time that you're going to knock yourself out of ever doing it. And you just won't do it. You got to go and you got to create that piece of content and put it out. Then you got to look at the data on that piece of content. You got to look at kind of what kind of emotions it evoked in the people who saw it, what feedback you get from it. And then you got to iterate and create your next piece of content, then your next piece of content. That's the school of execution when it comes to content creation. So you got to do that. If monetization comes, great. The way to do early stage monetization is through UGC. It's if you're a good enough creator that your content actually looks good, even though you may not have an audience, you may have brands pay you to do that production work, but they won't pay you for your media reach because you don't have I'm always correcting myself from saying audience to saying community, because that's the shift that I'm seeing.
What do you think is the difference?
Audience is it's a one-way form of communication, right? Where if I'm on a stage and I'm rapping, they're seeing me, but I'm not really talking to them. I'm talking to them kind of, in a way, but in a community, not only are they, it's multiple lines of communication in a community. So in a community, they're consuming my content, so I'm communicating with them. They're communicating back to me with feedback. And then the third part, and what makes it a community versus an audience, is they're communicating with each other. That's the key. So once you have a group of people who are like talking about the stuff they learned from you, and they're taking it offline, whether it's in the comment section or whether they're just meeting in real life, or whether they start following each other as a result of both of them following you, you've built a community. That's the key. That's where the value is building a community. Because I can tell you, like, when we do our creator method events and we have, X amount of people show up, they're all friends with each other now.
Right.
And then I see them go off and collaborate on content together. So we're forming a community. And Valeria's audience is very much a community. Like, when we've done live meetups, not for creator method, like people who haven't like subscribed to that, but just in general, they're coming together as friends. They're showing up, groups of 5 or 10 women who are coming together because they follow Valeria's content. That's community.
What do you think creators who start getting some traction, they're consistent, it's starting to move, right? Audience is going up, maybe one way, maybe a little bit of two-way that they're communicating. Things are going well. What do you think is one of the biggest mistakes they make?
I call it the SOS. It's the shiny object syndrome. So what happens is, as soon as they get a little bit of scale, they start thinking, I'm going to do a subscription model, I'm going to do an ebook, I'm going to take a pivot here and here. The thing is that they have this early traction, they get excited, shiny objects show up, not only ones that they themselves just manifest out of their own heads, but a lot of the times they'll get phone calls, hey, I want you to do this and I want you to do that. But you start getting pulled away and people start offering you things that actually have no value to you. They're not paying you, they're not giving you additional exposure, you're not learning anything from them. So you start getting a lot of asks. And that's the shiny object syndrome. Whether it's strangers, whether it's your friends, whether it's you came up, hey, I'm gonna do an ebook for like $5. We had one of our members, she's great, her name's Julia. She started with us, she had 17,000 followers when she became a member. Now she's at like 73, 75,000. And she went, and now she's making a much more meaningful amount of money. She has great scale. And she was on one of our community calls, because we do these community calls once a week where we interact with our members. And she's like, I'm gonna do, like, Gary, what do you think? I wanna do an ebook and I wanna do this other thing and this, like, and I said to her, Julia, this has only happened to you in the last 7 months. I said, you haven't built sufficient moats, right? You know what I mean by moats?
Yes.
I know you know what I mean, yeah. You haven't built sufficient moats, you haven't built enough scale.
For other people, that's a base.
No, a moat is it's kind of a base, but like if you imagine like castles from the old days.
Yes.
And around the castles, before building the second castle, they would dig a trench around the castle and they'd put like sharks in there and shit so people couldn't get through. You know what I mean? So you have to build your defenses, and the way you build your defenses as a creator in the early days is you get more scale. Or you have to get more scale. So when you start going after all of these, like, you don't start. When they built a castle, they didn't. Their first order of business, once they made a nice castle and they wanted to expand their empire, they didn't then say, okay, now I'm building a second castle next door.
Protect it.
They said, let's build a moat, then we can, and then each castle has its own defense, right? So she hadn't built those moats. She hadn't.
How do you know as a creator? Sorry to cut you off. How do you know as a creator that you have a moat?
You with scale, with additional scale. You need more scale, because once you're, the data will always go flat for certain periods of time. So in terms of your average views per video, your various engagement metrics, and your follower counts, they'll go flat. But what happens is, if you don't build sufficient moats, that period of time when it goes flat and it doesn't grow, it lasts longer. So Valeria right now at her scale, we continue to experience like stretches when it just flattens out, right? But they're relatively short. And what I mean is that we'll have a period of time where things just aren't hitting, and we don't have our certain amount of like either hundreds or potentially thousands or tens of thousands of net new followers daily. And there'll be times when it just stops, and 3 days go by, a week go by, Though that happens far less now, because we have that defense, because we've established and built a personal brand and a community that orbits the personal brand.
Understood.
Whereas Julia, at 70,000 followers, she hasn't done that yet. So by her diverting her attention and doing other shit, she's not building sufficient scale that gives her the defenses that she needs to be able to continue building the scale, where the moments of flat data become less frequent, and the duration of those kind of negative data cycles becomes shorter because she has more scale. She builds more scale. We, like, by the way, like, this isn't just me guessing it. This isn't anecdotal. We opened up a clothing brand, and even then we waited for like 5 years to do it, and we did it for 2 years, and we were doing a couple of $1 million in revenue per year with the clothing brand. But I realized that I'm nowhere near as good as you, because you, when you did your brand, like, you know, you understand product development, e-commerce, logistics, reverse logistics. We tried to figure all that out. And so then 30% of Valeria's time, because she was doing the SOS, right? The shiny object syndrome, and we were all collectively chasing this, me, Valeria, our CEO, Rachel, that we took our eye off the ball, and 30% of Valeria's time, she was flying to Portugal, designing clothes, this and that, like, overhead went through the roof, and we weren't making a sufficient amount of money to do it. And we realized we don't know how to do it. And so we went back to our core competence, was creating content and scaling community. And then everything took off from there.
It's
right?
the idea of focus, right? So many times we shiny object syndrome, things come across our table that are so exciting, and it's like, oh my God, I want to do that. And it's
That's
like,
the problem.
It's reminding ourselves that, wait, we need to focus. That, like, this is who I am. This is actually what I do. Everything else might be good for a minute or two, but if you just continue to build the base, in my opinion, this is the base or the moat around what you do, you continue to build up the castle, dig the trenches deeper.
Absolutely.
And that's a very important thing, not only for creators, for every single business owner, literally in the world. It's like, I just did this morning with our team at the Founders Club. It's like, all these amazing things are happening. We want to do this, we want to do that, we want to do this, we want to do that. And it's like, okay, cool. Let's do the exercise. Let's open the P&L. What were the 3 main things that actually drove the cash? Oh wait, it was only 2 things. What are those 2 things? Yeah. I know that they're kind of boring because we've been doing it every day for the last 2 years. How can we do it better? Correct. How can we do more of it?
You're absolutely right.
And it seems to be true for creators as well.
Absolutely.
But is that true with content too? Because one thing you said to me, we were in the sauna, obviously. You said,
by the way, sorry, I found this new sauna. I got to tell you about it. I just saw it in Brazil. Let's have a sauna discussion.
We're going to have a sauna discussion.
This new sauna that I found in Brazil, I'm already talking to them. I have a translator for Portuguese.
Okay.
We got to get this.
We're going to build the sauna.
Yeah.
But in the sauna, not the Brazilian sauna,
no.
but in the Gary sauna.
In my house,
You said something, because I was talking about my content, and you said, you got to have your formats.
Yeah.
And formats, to me, like, when I think of like business, it's like you need to have your hero products, the ones that like kind of work, that are consistent, that people can rely on you on, like that your audience gets to know you through that format. Mm-hmm. Is that true? Is that focus true also in the content creation as much as it is in like running your business, as much as it is in shiny object syndrome? Like, if it sounds like the communication, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're a creator, you're consistent, you know what's working, stick with it, but are you suggesting to all the members of the creator, like, are you suggesting specifically when you teach and you consult to keep testing other things, or just to stay focused?
So as a creator, and like with but with every other business, but specifically, we'll talk about it on the creator perspective, you have to strike a balance. You have to create a balance for yourself between creating content that drives your KPIs forward, KPIs, key performance indicators, which are like your reach, trailing 30-day reach, your follower count, increasing your follower count, engagement, all of those metrics that are both a combination of vanity metrics and a true measure of community building. So you have to find proven formats that will drive those numbers in the direction you want them to go as you're building out the asset of your personal brand. You have to balance that activity with constant reinvention and the evolution of your personal brand. You have to find the balance between both. And so when I talk to creators, and the number one complaint, I laugh because like I get this question on a daily basis. They're like, I'm not growing anymore. I'm not growing. I've been shadow banned. I've been like, you haven't been shadow banned. I assure you haven't been shadow banned. And I tell them that every time that our data goes flat in the last 9 years, 100% of the time it's come back. It's come back. It always comes back. And so the question I ask them is, I say, okay, do you have any concepts or formats that you do that are high performers? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I said, okay. I go to their Instagram page, I go to their Reels tab, and I look at the grid, and I start scrolling down. And let's say I'll see on average views, 2,000 views. 2,000 views, 2,100, 2,132, 1,892, blah, 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 blah. 87,000. I see another one, 102,000. I see another one, 500,000. I said, what are these? What are these? Oh, this is this thing that I do when I talk about this, or I have a certain background. So I'm like, okay. I said, so you know that this format or this concept, it performs, right? It performs fairly consistently. It hits way above the average amount of views per video.
Right.
And they're like, yes, yes. Now, these are the people who are saying, I got shadow banned. I'm screwed.
Yeah.
It's all gone to shit. I said, okay, what percentage of your content in the last 30 days have been these winning concepts? And then I hear silence. And they're like, I'm not sure. I go, let's figure it out. How many reels have you posted in the last 30 days? People are doing it full time. They're posting 2 reels a day. 60. How many are the winning concept? 4. I go, so approximately 8% of your content is the content that drives your growth. 8%. Why is the other 92% this experimental stuff? I go, all you need to do is shift. You do 75% of content that grows your asset, which is your personal brand, and 25% experimentation, because you do have to reinvent yourself. You do. I'm not saying don't. That's the problem. And this is in all cases. This isn't like an outlier. In all cases, they're not doing the stuff that they need to do. Now, in the very few cases where they continue to do the formats that they need to do and they're still not growing, that means that format's fallen off for whatever reason.
What you just said is the most impactful thing, and it's
You think?
and not only that, I think it's like a fusion just happened in my brain where I realized that building a physical product brand and building a personal brand are actually the same thing.
Is it?
Because what you just mentioned is how we test creatives. And sometimes when I speak to brands and they're like, we actually have the opposite problem. Brands figure out a creative that works,
Yep.
and they do it 100% of the time. And then it stops working because, things change. And then they go from hero to zero.
Right.
And they panic.
Yeah.
But the ratio that you just said, the 75-25, do 75% of what works, 25% always be testing.
That's not universal. You can change that ratio depending on your kind of appetite for growth.
But you would never say flip it upside down and test 80% of the time and only do what works 20% of the time.
It depends what stage you're at. If you're in the beginning stages, then yeah, that ratio changes based on what's going on. So let's say you've got your formats and you're 80% of the time you're running you're winning formats that drive growth.
Right.
And for whatever reason, they fall off. They start falling off. When one falls off, meaning it's stopped, like for whatever reason, it didn't become a long-term format. It happens. When that happens, then I would change it from, let's say, 80-20 to maybe 60-40, because then I'm on the hunt for that new format. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you always want to come back to your gold standard, right? You always want to come back. You want to have 70% of your content be the one that's working. Eventually, 1 or 2 of them might fall off.
You do, but then there's even other circumstances where even though something's working, you've evolved as a person and you no longer want to do that format. Like you no longer want to do. Let's say you no longer, I don't know, man. Like,
let's get into this. This is really important.
Hold on a second, but I'll give you an example. So right now, you're a founder, and you're
Right.
very much, you're operating Founders Club.
Yeah.
You're an entrepreneur. You're 30 years old, and you're an entrepreneur. But there may come a time, I know you. There will come a time
Yeah.
when you're going to become a private equity guy or a venture capital guy, or you're going to have a hedge fund, your own.
Yeah.
Right? And so now, maybe you're not going to want to talk that much about operations anymore. That may be like that, and that's a legitimate evolution. And maybe it's 20 years from now when you're my age.
No, I've already done that. I used to talk about like ad setups and creative
Right.
and stuff like that. Now I just talk about the
Right.
mindset of being a founder. Yeah, people change.
You change. So
Yeah.
even though if you continue doing that operational stuff, it may still drive your personal brand forward, but because you just don't want to do it anymore. It's not in your heart anymore. So then you got to come up with a new format. So the trigger of adjusting that sliding scale to go between the proven content to the experimentation content, that changes as you change.
I want to talk about authenticity and trends,
All right.
because what you just brought up is something really important. And I find myself doing this, as we put out a ton of content. How important is it to you as a creator, you know, there's trends that happen every day, right? There's always these new trends. Would you suggest to prioritize what feels good, what is authentic to you, over just hopping on a trend? Because sometimes, you know, things come up. It's like, do this thing, like do this dance, do this, you know, that, because you know it's
I
gonna.
know
You know
about the dances, bro.
You know about the dances.
I'm a very good
And I
dancer.
look at it, and I'm just like, if I could do that, it might work, but that's not me. That's not my authentic self. And I preach a lot about just being unapologetically yourself.
Yeah.
But as a creator, they're looking at the metrics. They're trying to find a new format. They're trying to grow. What would you say to them? Stick with with who you are?
I think you, along with everybody else, is overthinking it. I think you're overthinking it, and I'll tell you why. If a trend comes up and you look at it, and it's it's a trend, like, you know that song that just slammed Drake at the Super Bowl with Kendrick Lamar, and he does that little shuffle thing.
Yeah.
So now that's a trend. Everyone's doing this stuff. It's an easy dance to do, and it's catchy, and you know, whatever. So people are doing it. If you, with your genre of content, are looking at it, if you think that you can use it as inspiration to create content that's on brand for you, do it. If you don't. That's it. That's it. That's the decision you need to make.
You gotta say that one more time.
Really?
Yeah, because I think that's golden. Is what you're saying? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
What you're saying is take the trend, but make it your own.
I'm saying take the trend and make it your own if you think it's on brand for you and applicable. If it's not, then don't. Then leave it alone. You don't have to do it.
But I want to grow.
Then wait till the next trend. See what I mean? This whole, listen, there's a fundamental, I think, disconnect in the generation of people who grew up natively on social media and reality, right? Everybody wants instant gratification. They want to go viral today.
Right.
When you talk about, and this may be like a little kind of segue into the next thing, is that viral personal brands and just viral content in general, it doesn't have longevity. In order to have longevity, you have to create a real personal brand. That's the premise of like Creator Method and everything that we do and everything that we've done with Valeria, where it's okay not to hop on every single trend, but you hop on the ones that are applicable to you. Because to me, it's not like attention at all costs. I want the quality of attention to be good. You got to be a little patient. This generation, they want it yesterday. So yeah, you can build a personal brand that's based on virality, that's based on sensationalism. You don't have to look too far. Look at Andrew Tate. He might be the exception.
Welcome
of somebody
to Miami.
Yeah, right. he may be the exception of somebody who can stay with that long term, but he has to, and he has been reinventing himself, right? Since the early days when it was like his like attention at all costs, this massive sensationalism, talking about like slapping women in the face and stuff. Like when he did that got him his attention, that got him his virality. But he's toned it down because he understands that you're not going to build a brand just screaming your head off all the time and just being being a sensationalist. So there really has to be this balance between hopping on trends and building a personal brand for the long term.
We talked about focus. We talked about building a personal brand, the different ways to do it. You recently started the Creator Method. It's been absolutely blowing up. I was around and probably in the sauna when like you were thinking about it.
Bro, you're the inspiration behind it. No, and I'll tell you why.
Wow.
Because I initially wanted to do just a course, and I wanted to create a bunch of long form videos about the kind of some of the experiences that we've had since starting Valeria's personal brand. We were going to sit down and rip a bunch of long form videos with myself, Valeria, our CEO Rachel. We were going to publish it. We were going to just charge a one-time fee and say, okay, it's a one-time fee, you pay it, and then that's it. And it was going to be more of like a short-term kind of cash. I hate to use the word cash grab, but that's what it would be.
Right.
And we wouldn't be building it for longevity. When you came over on one of our sauna sessions and you explained Founders Club, how there's such a massive value in community, that was a shift for me. I don't know if I ever told you this, but that's
wow.
It's when you. So then I added the component of the community, and when you said to me that. What appealed to me was that you obviously charge a membership fee, but you charge it annually, I believe.
Yep.
Right. So when you said that to me, I was like, why wouldn't I create a community and connect the creators together and then have me hosting these weekly calls and doing this? And then I started thinking about like YPO, which I was a member briefly back in 2012.
75-year-old organization.
Right. Right. And then I started thinking about it more, but it was because of you that I added the community part of it, which is interesting, where I believe that the community part in talking to our members. That's what I think is, I thought the community part would be like 20% of the value, and the curriculum and the access to, myself and to a smaller degree Valeria would be 80%, but it's not. It's them talking to each other, them coming to our events, them and being together. The friendships that I see forming it's really profound. So thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. I'm happy that I was able to say it in this format.
Wow.
Talking to you on your podcast to formally thank you for helping me birth Creator Method. Thank you.
Wow. And did you speak to Bart? Because did you get in? Are you in the Founders Club?
He emailed me, and then I took off to Brazil.
Okay.
So I'm gonna.
Preemptively say we're happy for you to be. I mean, you've been pretty much a member. You come to our events. You're in the community already. Yes. We're just formalizing it.
Yes, absolutely.
I think the one thing on top of that I'll add, and why I was so adamant that you have to have a community, and I know a lot of people, I think you should have your community. I think you should be a part of communities. Like I was a part of many communities. There's people, I have a community for fitness. I have a community for spirituality. You should have a business community too, because we all are, the magic is in those conversations. You're a member
in those types of communities.
Yeah, I join different things I'm into. I'm in business is one of them.
You and I we're doing it with the motorcycles, right?
Yes, the motorcycles, the guns, Florida, let's go, But I think like one thing on top of all of that, the reason why is, and I have a really good friend, and he's gonna come on the pod, so I won't name drop, so then eventually he can get on, he'll tell a story himself. And he's very famous, he's got a huge community, massive. And an amazing example was, growing up, I've always wanted to meet him. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we all have those people we grow up, we look up to them, they go, wow, 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 they have this star power. And I was like, okay, you know what, he's doing all these events, they were expensive, but I saved up money and I went. I went to one, got to spend a couple hours with him. Went to another one, got to spend a couple more hours with him. Another one, 5 years, events, meetups, texting, now we're like text basis, I can call him. I haven't been to an event in 2.5 years. And he called me and he goes, this event's right down your alley. What's going on? And I said, well, I was coming to these events to like get to know you, but like we're friends now. I can just like call you. I don't have to come to like the event to spend time with you. And it was a light bulb moment for him. And he called me back 2 weeks later with his whole team. So 20 people on this call. He had me jump on a Zoom call. And he goes, tell them what you told me. And I was like, well, you're like my friend now. You're not like this hero.
Yeah.
You're just like my friend. You're like everybody else. You're very successful, but if I need something, I'll just text you. And he was like, that was our mistake. Because he constantly had to sell new people over and over and over again because there was a star power and then it eventually faded. We all meet these incredible people and we meet them and we're like, oh, you're just like us. And the power of a community is that it's an ecosystem. It's like a plant. And the value is never ending because the people are coming in. It's not always just about Gary or Valeria. Yeah. You're important. You're like the soil.
Yes.
But you're introducing new plants every day.
You're absolutely right. It's interesting because around the time when I created this, I heard that from you. Mm-hmm. And again, it's just interesting. The importance of talking to people and to keeping an open mind is really important. I was at a dinner party, not a dinner, but like at a friend's house with Valeria, and our kids were there and they were playing with their kids. And I was speaking to the dad, a gentleman. Yeah. And he said, yeah, we're part of this Tony Robbins group. Anthony Robbins, right? Like, what do you mean? And he said, well, like we're a bunch of friends and we have like a WhatsApp chat and we go to his events together and we kind of like talk about the things that he teaches. We go on fishing trips together. And yeah, so that was part, and it's this community that was formed around Tony Robbins' content and his persona and his, so I agree with you. The community is the glue. The community, it's not the access, it's the community. So anyways, I'm really happy that you shed light on this and that.
So, I mean, tell us a little bit more about it. We've talked about like you consulting, you teaching, you have weekly classes, there's courses, there's material, you bring in the CEO of Valeria Inc., you bring in Valeria, like yourself, there's a tremendous amount of resources. Yeah. I personally love creators because I think creators are founders. They just start with like the creation side, then eventually they build a business on the back of it. Founders, they start the business, and then they figure out how to create. Yeah. They both just start at the opposite ends of the spectrum. I know we've talked about maybe even doing an event where we bring them both together.
Yeah. When you talked about it, the word maybe wasn't there, but now the word maybe is there.
No. Where I want to tease it, because I don't want to launch it now. Right. But we're definitely going to do something because it's one and the same. They just start on different sides of the track.
Yeah, I agree.
And so talk to me a little bit more. I know the inspiration was there, but for people out there who might have heard this, was listening to the episode from the beginning, we spoke about focus. You just added another business to what you do. Tell me how you feel about it. Has it taken away focus from Valeria? Has it added? Has it just fallen in line amongst the things that you're already doing?
It's integrated very well into what we do. It's given me purpose that the only time I ever felt. Okay, so before Valeria Inc. came along, all of my businesses were based on with the priority of making money. Now I've added this layer of purpose, and that's really skyrocketed everything I do. So with Valeria, I had and continue to have this purpose of making her happy and seeing her develop her personal development through content creation, which, by the way, like exponentially increases the rate of her personal growth. Like the last 8 years have been monumental. So that on the content creation side. But for this business, this is now giving me this massive purpose because I love this so much. I love talking to creators so much. I love seeing their personal growth. I love seeing the growth of their data. I love seeing the growth of their income because they come and talk to me about it. I meet them at the events. We talk to them weekly online. So yeah, it's integrated seamlessly. It got to the point with Valeria Inc. because Rachel is like, she's very capable. She's incredible. She's the CEO of Valeria Inc. She's been with us for 5 years now. It took a long time for us to get Valeria Inc. to where it was. And I just found that I didn't have enough to do. I didn't find enough to do, like outside of riding my motorcycles and hanging out with my kids and all that fun stuff.
Is Gary saying he was getting bored?
I was getting uninspired.
Uninspired.
I wasn't bored because I had a lot to do, but I was just, the things that I was doing, it wasn't feeding my soul. Creator Method, I love it. I love it so much that, and the fact that, we're obviously doing okay financially with it, and I see the growth trajectory on it. I just love it a lot. So it integrates really well because I love it as much as I do. The clothing line, like nobody really loved in the company. We were kind of doing it because we had it was a money first kind of motivation, and now it's purpose first motivation for both me and Valeria and our team. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy like the impact that we're having. With Creator Method provides the community that Valeria had with me. So when Valeria started, all of the hardships, at any stage, by the way, it takes a lot to get through them. It takes a lot mentally because these aren't like creators for the most part. They're not, some of them are, but they're not like seasoned, people who have come off of a decade of building businesses or who have like, fancy business degrees. They're normal people, right? And so Valeria had that support system with me. She always had me being with her and saying, hey, like, let's do it this way. Let's do it that way. You're amazing. You're good. Like getting her through the periods of time when she had hate comments, so she needed that. These creators need that too. They need the mentorship. They need the community. And that's what it is. And it's them, again, it comes back to them finding each other. I'm just really seeing these relationships blossom. And the other thing that we're doing is, you mentioned like for the meetups and like we bring people in, like we bring people in. So we have one coming up. Today's Thursday. We have one coming up on Saturday in New York. We have our third meetup because we do them every quarter. We're bringing in the CMO from one of our big clients from the Valeria Inc. side to talk about what the brands are looking for from the creators, and that's something that they wouldn't have access to. Right. Like the CMO is going to be on the panel.
That's crucial. I remember like we did a call. We bought on a buyer from Target.
Yeah.
People are like, how do I get into Target? Like those are the things that you otherwise wouldn't have access to, which is why surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals. But I just like picked up on a trend, and I want to call it out, specifically people who listen to this point. Early in your life, it was, there was limiting beliefs that come at you for all good reasons. They just come at you because we all have them. Someone then breaks the glass ceiling for you, believes in you, pulls you up, you self-actualize in a way, get your feet wet, start making money. And it seems like there was a certain point, and it might have been at that $10,000 in the bank account. It feels like from that point forward, a lot of your mission, a lot of your purpose has constantly been around pulling other people up.
Yes. Yeah. And up until Creator Method started, it was exclusively around Valeria. and obviously the kids, but like as a dad, not as kind of like a mentor in that, you know what I mean? Like from an entrepreneurial perspective. But yeah, it was about, that was my sole mission. And it continues to be with Valeria, and now it is with Creator Method. And I just think in general, there's not enough of that. The world is very competitive and people don't necessarily want to share. And I think that once like the people who have the knowledge and the ability, once they'll understand that they will be exponentially more successful as they help other people.
Yes.
And I believe that's just a shift that's happening just in general with the technology that is social media. I always say that social media and being a creator, it's my favorite industry to date of all the industries that I've been in, because it grows collaboratively and not competitively. And that's really important.
Are you talking about as a creator when you collaborate with other creators?
Correct. They're not competitors.
Deal flow sharing.
Not deal flow. Deal flow. I haven't even thought of deal flow. But the fact that you and I, like arguably you and I are both creators.
Right.
Right? And the fact that we have this collaboration, we benefit from this because obviously there's like, I'll have access, I'll be seen by the people in your community. You'll be seen by the people in my community. But there's something else. There's a magic that happens when two creators get together, and that the sum of the quality of their content, not by production value, but by the ability for that content to connect, the value of that content, the quality of the content goes up. It's not a 1 + 1 = 2 situation. When you and I sit down together, the content that we can create together versus on our own, if let's say you and I were doing monologues, this content is far superior. This conversation is far superior than I believe than if you and I were on our own, because we feed off of each other. That's what's important for creators. So what I'm saying is that creators grow collaboratively versus competitively. And in the early days, they see other creators as competitors. And it's when they make that pivot and they understand that we're all, like we just spent some time in Brazil and, you know, there were other creators there and nobody was like, hey, you know, everyone was like,
I'm not going to tag you. Don't tag me.
Oh my God. That doesn't even come up. Creators already who have scale, they understand the value and the power of helping each other. It's just like, it's a beautiful industry overall. It's like nothing I've ever seen before.
I think the same is to be said about brands and founders of every business. The amount of times, you know, I say this thing on stage sometime and people get shook. I said, I would have paid a fortune to be in a group with 10 other owners of sleep companies. I would have paid a fortune, regardless of the size.
That specific, like
yeah, like my niche or 10, I would have paid to be around. And so many of us feel like, oh, it's competition or it's me versus you, but you're so right. If we can sit down and collaborate and communicate and share and lift each other up, it's the best and most powerful thing. And that's where community comes into play, is leveraging the network, working with other people.
Absolutely.
It's huge, it's massive. I want to make a little bit of a pivot.
Let's do it.
Okay. And what is something that you think that the industry is, you know, creators, social media. What do you think that, I want to make sure I say this. What do you think that the industry believes is true that you believe is false? Like, what do you think is common? Everyone's, oh yeah, this is the way, but from what you know is not true.
So people believe that they're creating content to please the algorithm. They're algorithm first. That's completely false. That is just, it's a misconception, but it's a very powerful misconception.
Wow. People
are thinking, how do I create content that the algorithm will give distribution to, that will give reach to, that will give me views? But what they're doing is they're ignoring the reality. And the reality is that the algorithm is simply an AI that analyzes markers being like, they're analyzing data, signals from, let's say, for a certain piece of content. And depending on what data those signals provide them with, then the algorithm decides whether to give it more distribution. But those signals are created when human connection is achieved. So instead of creating content for the algorithm, you should create content for people. Because if you connect with people, the algorithm detects it and pushes it out, meaning gives it distribution. That's what it's doing. And so people ignore that. That's, I think, the biggest thing that is untrue. People are talking about the algorithm, and I see a lot of people trying to sell courses about, I'm going to show you 100 hooks, you know, and there's something.
Top 10 hooks, you know.
Correct.
Yeah.
And there's something to that. And they will perform, but then you're not truly creating a long-term brand. So you may have some short-term success in terms of like high amounts of views, but let me know how many advertisers call you who want to advertise and integrate with you from, you know, stuff that's, I call it hooks and hacks. So when you're pandering to the algorithm and you're optimizing for the algorithm, you're missing the entire point. The skill that needs to be built, and the skill, not built, but like developed and honed, is the communication skill, is the connection to other human beings. It's being able to, bro, even when I sit down with you now, the more podcasts I've done, I don't know, I feel I'm getting better at it. But I would be nervous before. I'm nervous on stages.
Always, yeah.
Right. But I get less nervous and I get better at it as time goes by. And people are trying to build a skill of how do I game the system. And I say this from experience because I have a YouTube channel with 4.6 million subscribers.
Wow.
And I create viral content there. And it's been trending nothing but down for the last 5 years. The other public example is BuzzFeed. BuzzFeed 5 years ago, they had a massive valuation, and their numbers continue to go down because they're built on virality, not on brand. That's the, sorry for such a long-winded response, but that's the biggest misconception. Everyone's building for attention at all cost, where they got to be building for human connection for the long term.
A great example, a friend of mine is a comedian, and every post he makes on social media goes like super viral.
Yeah.
So I texted him and I was like, what are you doing? Like this, I've never seen anything like this before. And he said something that wasn't what you just said, but it's exactly the same thing. But he communicated it in an analogy that I think will sum this up, and I'm curious if you agree. He said, it's so easy. I rewatch my live stand-up, and the parts where I get the loudest laugh, I just post on social because it's the human connection that drives the laugh. So he's like, I would never post a joke that failed, unless that was the whole point of the video, but I would never post a joke that failed because if it failed in person to the human, it will fail the algorithm.
Yeah.
And you're right, it's human first.
That's genius what he's doing. He's using a test group, a smaller test group, right? Because the stage, there's maybe 100 people in front of him, 200 people, right? So he's using a smaller test group. He's seeing where there's a spike in engagement being laughter. That's the engagement. It's the same thing when you're going to publish this video, I'm guessing, on your YouTube channel.
YouTube, TikTok, everything.
But you're going to publish the long form. But on YouTube specifically, you can look at the kind of, I forgot what the name of the report, but it's like a graph that shows engagement. It shows where people are kind of scrolling and they're seeing that little preview pane and they're scrolling past. You're going to see where they drop off. You're going to see so there are certain things that we're going to talk about. You see where they drop off. That's how you're going to know how to create a reel from this conversation, right? You're going to see where the engagement picks back up and you're going to create reels from that. And what he's doing is essentially the same thing. And he's leveraging this smaller audience size of 200 people, and then he's creating content based on that. Yeah, that's genius. But to your point, yeah, he's finding where people are connecting through the act of laughter, which is engagement.
What do you think, like, this is kind of the same question, but it's more around beliefs, right? Because this was like, before it was, okay, industry-wide, people approach it this way, this is how we're approaching it. Yeah. What is a belief that you hold true? And this can be about life, it can be about business, but I'm genuinely curious what you're going to say because this is not your first rodeo. What is a belief that you hold true that most people would disagree with?
I mean, it's just a conversation I had today. It's more of it can be seen as a macro thing or a micro thing. I think it's in the way that you support your partner as a man, kind of going back to that conversation. I was talking to a gentleman who you and I, you know of him, and he has this, thing where he coaches men that are more like at my age, and I see a lot of problems with marriages in general, and I see a lot of men not supporting their spouse. So I think a lot of men believe, you're asking me what do most people believe in, a lot of men believe that their sole kind of mission and their top priority is to make as much money as possible. what I believe in that I think most men don't believe in or they don't know yet is that currency, actual like financial currency is one thing, but if you're not helping your partner develop, if you're not helping your partner achieve their goals outside of potentially just being a sidekick to you, then you're setting yourself up for major unhappiness. And that's more on the personal side what I'm talking about. So by not helping your partner progress the way I do with Valeria and prioritizing her progress and her evolution, I believe that's the cause of a lot of unhappiness, both between, you know, the adults in the relationship and whatever children they have. So I believe that men need to kind of change their value system around what they bring to the relationship, because unless they're bringing to the relationship the priority of helping their spouse develop, then they're dropping the ball. So that's kind of my long-winded response to what I think that most people don't believe that I do.
Wow. I mean, it's very powerful. You're basically saying that devotion to somebody else, right? And really leveling them up and investing into them, it's extremely powerful. So you're saying that most men either A, are not even choosing that, but B, they're just focusing on themselves over that?
No, they believe that the value they provide to their family is money.
Oh, period. Because I can pay the bills, I'm valuable.
Because I can pay the bills, because I can buy my kids nice gifts and send them to a fancy private school and buy my wife nice things and take us on vacation. That's my value. That's what I can do. And the more I do of that, the happier everyone's going to be. But if those men don't actively invest into the evolution of their wife, then the money won't be enough. That's what I think.
Dude, that is that is super powerful, and that is so true, right? Like, there's so many people that I know. It's just like, oh well, you know, I made more money this month, or I bought this new car, or whatever. And it's much more than that. It's developing the actual connection and the relationship with the person you're with, and growing.
Valeria and I are super tight, and we're super tight not because I was able to provide her with any kind of financial freedom. That's not the reason why we're super tight. We're super tight because she knows, like, I'm behind her, and I know she's behind me, and we constantly prioritize each other's development. It's the constant prioritization of your spouse's development versus the priority of, I just need to make as much money as I can and give it to my family. That makes me a man. That makes you a provider. But it's not, I don't think it's a long-term play.
Wow. 18-year gap.
I'm the older one.
18-year gap. Tell me, that's not an easy thing to do. There's a lot of judgment people have had. I wouldn't be surprised.
It was harder for her.
Right.
I just don't care what people think. So.
Was that something that you envisioned for yourself? Were you always like, I'm going to marry a younger woman? Or it just so happened it's just like, that's the person I fell in love with?
It was actually a negative for me. Wow. I wouldn't, this isn't something of my choosing. Like, I would have preferred that there was a smaller age gap. It's not great. The reason it's not great for me, it has nothing to do with our dynamic or our relationship. When I met Valeria, she was already fully developed, like in the sense that she had already been on her own for 6 years, like since the age of 14 or something like that. She was traveling the world modeling, and she was financially independent. And then when I met her, and she was 20 when we got together, like she kind of took care of shit on her own. She was very mature. The reality of the situation and the saddest part about it is that she's going to be alive for probably about 30 years after I'm dead. So to me, that's the big negative about our age gap. But I tell myself that I gotta appreciate what I have now. And if I start projecting into what's going to happen when I'm not around, and the fact that she's going to have to be without me for 30 years, or however long that period of time is going to be, because women typically live longer than men, and then add the 18-year delta.
You're 10 years plus, minimum 28 years.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Something like that. So that's a sad kind of reality. But honestly, I don't want to speak for Valeria, but I'm super happy. I think she's happy too. So to me, it's like, yeah, that's a negative, but nothing's perfect. I could have married a woman closer to my own age, and we could have been miserable and gotten divorced. Who knows?
That's a very powerful thing to say, and I think a lot of men they just want to marry a younger woman, maybe because there's a power dynamic that they envision, or because it keeps them youthful.
We've always been equal. Larry and I have a very you've been around us, man. You
guys are magical, really, and I think it's inspiring, to be honest, because it's relationships in general are just difficult, and watching you guys navigate and work together and raise 3 boys. I mean, I grew up in a family of 5 boys, but like it's action.
Your mother is our hero.
Yes, yeah. My mom represents that for a lot of women out there.
I want to actually have a conversation. I need tips from your mother because you're obviously an exceptional dude.
She raised 5 beasts.
No, I don't know your brothers. Oh, I know Mikey. I met him and he's great. I haven't met your other 3 brothers.
You got to meet them. I'll tell you what my mom would say, okay? Because she has this one piece of advice that she gives everyone. Because she's like a super mom, right? So and grandma actually. She has 7 grandchildren.
Not from you yet.
Not from me.
I'm just saying.
The one thing she always says, and I'm curious your take, because I know you're the opposite of this, which is why it's important. She always says that don't be friends with your kids. That is her number one thing. That doesn't mean don't have a relationship, don't have connection, but her whole thing is we are not friends. I am your mother. And that's where the buck stops. Tell me everything. We'll have connection. I'll be there for you. Like the relationship is there. Because people say, "Oh, what do you mean? I want my son to come to me and us." That exists, but we are not friends. And for a lot of people, that hits in a crazy way. But I've always viewed that. My mom was not only tough love and leading by example. Like I still have no excuse. Like I wake up 6 a.m., 6:30, my mom's already finished the gym. Like she's up 3:30, everything. She's a monster.
Yeah.
She's led by example, but I'm curious your take on that because I know how intentional, and I love it, how intentional you are with creating relationships with your children, how meaningful that is to you. But I'm curious what you think of that.
I think it depends how you define the word friendship. Like, so for example, I have a fishing trip planned with them, and I'm taking all 3 of them on a fishing boat, and we're spending the day on the water fishing, like with a guide and everything. We'll probably develop, as a result, that helps with our relationship and that develops our friendship. Look, there's a balance. I think your mom is more traditional. Your mom's older than me. And she comes, and your mom's Israeli. Like your mom's, so that's
Moroccan too.
Israeli
like
Moroccan.
Two fires.
Yes. Look, there needs to be a balance that's struck. You know what I mean? So I don't know if I necessarily like fully agree with your mom. I think there has to be a layer of friendship in there, but there has to be a respect to understand that I'm the boss.
That's
at this stage, I'm the boss. At this stage in their lives, I'm the boss. And one of the things I always tell them is I said, we're not equal. I always tell them we're not equal. Because, and Valeria would try to do this shit with me. She's like, I don't know. I'm going to incriminate myself because like you have to clean up after yourself more. Because it's the example to the kids. And I'm like, I've been working for like over 30 years, and I can
when they do what I did,
right? And I can hire like people to work in the house to like clean up after me. So I know I don't have to clean up. She goes, well, how do you expect them to do that if you don't do that? And I said, because we're not equal. And I just tell them all the time, we're not equal. Papa, it's not fair. Okay, well, first of all, life's not fair, but second of all, we're not equal. So look, I think that there has to be a layer of friendship. I have, out of the 3 boys, there's certain ones that are more leaning into their friendship with me, but ultimately they're all doing it to get what they want. And the other one's fighting me more. I think there has to be a component of it. For me, this is kind of like really personal, but I often imagine my death, right? Which I think people your age probably don't. But once you get past a certain amount of years, when you know that you've got less time left than you've already had, I think people go through something. People call it a midlife crisis. Valeria says that's why I got motorcycles. I don't think so. I think I got motorcycles. I just fucking love motorcycles. And so I imagine my death. And when I imagine my death, like in the room, it's when I'm like very old because I feel I'm going to live a long time. And I have my kids around me, and I have my wife around me. And I think that if there isn't a layer of friendship, in contrast to your mom's kind of take on it, I don't know if they'll be in that room. And for me, that's what I want them.
Yeah.
Maybe it's selfish, but I want them in that room.
No, the way you're describing it is exactly how she describes it. She's like family oriented. We're going to be close forever, but we're different.
We're absolutely, yeah.
We're different, and that's the most important thing, right? And that's the magic. And I've seen you with your kids, and it resembles a lot of the way I grew up.
That's good to hear.
And it's powerful though, because the bond is there, but I'm still your dad, and it's super important and powerful.
But I'm very like, I don't beat around the bush with it. I tell them, we're friends, we're cool,
Yeah.
but I am your father.
Exactly.
And what I say goes.
Simple
and when
as
you're
that.
going to be old enough to make your own decisions, then you'll make your own decisions. No, but I go deep with them. I explain to them, I'm doing this to make you stronger for later because you're going to need resilience in these situations. That's why I'm getting you to do it now. You know, I just got home from Brazil. We were gone for 4 days, and these guys didn't blow the leaves. You've been to my property, our property, there's
You gotta blow the leaves in Miami.
Multiple times a day.
They're always falling.
Don't even get me started on this. I had a meltdown this morning with Valeria because like there's all kinds of crazy shit going on in the house from a maintenance perspective. But like I got home and I was like, why didn't they blow the leaves? What's going on? What'd they do? And I asked them, why didn't you blow the leaves? You knew to blow the leaves. Well, nobody told me to blow the leaves. Then it's like about a conversation about taking initiative, being a self-starter. That not blowing the leaves triggered a whole thing. Them saying to me, nobody told me to do it. And I said, what do you think's going to happen in life? You think people are going to tell you to do it? You think when you have your, you have your business and your clients, do you think they're going to always need to tell you to do something? You're going to lose those clients. So anyways, so I go kind of deep into.
One thing you brought up a few times, and even in our own conversations off the pod, was your perspective on death. And, some people think it's sad or whatever. And I think that's actually the opposite. I think it's powerful to just first know, we're all going to die one day. Great. Actually, it's also a relief. Like, I don't really care what we say and stuff because we're all gonna die one day. And a friend of mine, Jesse Hitzer, has this very famous line where he goes, everyone's picked out their like vacations and all that stuff, but who's picked out their spot, their lot where they're gonna be buried? Well, I don't need to do that. It's far away. Well, how far away? And vice versa. It's like, breaking down time in another bucket is, your kids at 18, 19 are eventually going to go to school and they're going to have their own friends.
Yeah, for sure.
They're not going to want to, tough to admit, but they might not want to wake up with Papa all day, every day.
Hopefully, maybe not all day.
But less. It's going to be less. And 10 years old, most people are like, oh, I got till they're 18. It's like, but you might only have 5, 6, 7 summers
absolutely.
left as children. And no one thinks of it that way. Right. And it's like, my dad, he's going to be 69 this year, and he's like, I'm going to live till 120. I say, I love it, but we can't just operate that way. Right. Because the way I view it, and now I live in Miami, he lives in Toronto. I think the average death age in Toronto, I think it's 83 now. Let's just pump him to 89 just for good vibes.
He's got 20 years.
Right. He's got 20 years. Wow, 20 years is a long time. I've only been alive for 30 of them. No, I've only got 20 summers left. I got 20 winters left. And he comes and visits me once a winter for a month. That means I only got 20 times that's left. So every time I'm more intentional with it. And it's very meaningful. And it's actually the opposite of grim. It actually allows you to live with more sense of like.
Yeah, I do that now with my kids. I do that now with my kids because, so I'll give you perspective that I think you don't have yet. When your parents die, it kind of related to business. Now you've seen the entire data set, right? You see all of it, right? You're told the stories of everything that happened before you could remember anything, before your first memory of their life before you were born, and before you could remember. No, but you know the
stories. Yeah.
You know the stories. But from your first memory, right? Like your first memory when you were, let's say, 5, as an example, 25 years ago. From that moment till the day your parents aren't around, you have now the entire set of information, and it puts bookends on life.
Wow.
Both my parents have passed away. It puts bookends on life, and now you see it for its entirety, and it makes you really understand that this is coming to an end, and what you do on a daily basis is the value of your life, not what you plan for in the future. So with my kids, I'm always trying to pull them into conversations. I'm always trying to hang out with them, and I'm doing as much as I can with the amount of stuff that I have going on. But it's seeing your parents pass away that really defines life. That really helps you define life. And then I just started moving differently, and I stopped letting a lot of things get to me that would get to me before, right? A lot of things that would get me down. And I've just been really seeing that complete data set of life when your parents pass. It truly gave me a gratitude that I never had before. And I'm really enjoying it. Like, I'm enjoying this stage of my life more than I think I've enjoyed any stage of my life. Because I start doing the inventory in my head, especially when I get down on stupid shit. I look at my wife, best case scenario, best human I've ever met, and I married her. My 3 kids, incredible. Best case scenario for me. Living in Miami, moving from Canada, not to shit on Canada, but I have now what to compare life there and life here. You've only moved here recently. You just wait. You just wait all the good shit. You're already experiencing it.
It's crazy in 1 month.
But once it's ingrained, I've been here almost 4 years. I see that. And now these new hobbies that I have, like, life is just incredible. It really does. And the one thing I'd want to impart on people listening to this, you don't have to wait until your parents die to gain that perspective. You can choose to have that perspective. You can choose to take advantage of your life. And there's a lot of talk on gratitude, but it's such a real thing. And I'm a much happier person for it. So that's kind of my take on it.
That's mega powerful. One thing I adopted, and I accidentally, so sometimes my keynotes, I have like, I know what I'm going to say. They're not by memory, they're all different. But sometimes after a 14-hour flight to Dubai, you just go on a tangent. And for whatever reason, I was like a little bit aggravated during Q&A. And someone said, I do the journal thing every day. It doesn't make me feel better. I'm grateful. I make a list of things I'm grateful for. And my response, and it's just, I want to say it because it lines up with what you just said, which was really beautiful, of just paying attention to how amazing life really is you get to kind of choose that every day. And he's like, well, I write it down. I was like, well, I'll give you my example. So I woke up, I took a 4-hour nap when I landed in Dubai, then supposed to go right to the stage. So I woke up, got out of bed, put my feet like in these 2 flip-flops, got my robe on. I'm like, what a life. Like, this is unbelievable. I'm in Dubai. Are you kidding? I open the door. They have this cart that goes up and down.
Where did you stay?
At the St. Regis.
Okay.
They have this cart. It goes up and down, and it's a coffee cart.
Yeah.
So usually you open it, you got to like wave down the guy, come, make me a coffee. I open it, he's like right there. Just so happened. I'm like, are you kidding? Espresso. Right away, cooks me an amazing like Arabic espresso. I have it. I open the blinds, you press a button. I'm like, what a life. I'm on the Merida. I go downstairs. 2 hours before my keynote, I book a paddle lesson in Dubai. Like, what? I'm freaking out. The car's waiting for me. I'm like, what? Free car for St. Regis? I play paddle with the coach. I come back, another espresso, rip this keynote. What an amazing, like, before I even give my keynote, this is the most incredible life. Now, let me tell you the other side. The other side is I woke up, put my feet in this flip-flops. My right foot, like, kind of went on the edge, and I almost, like, rolled my ankle, and I was like, whoa, and I, like, put my feet in. The guy was there when I opened the door, but I asked for an espresso. He made me a macchiato with the milk. You have to make it again. Fine. I went downstairs. The car that was supposed to be for me left. I had to wait 5 minutes for the other car. I could have been annoyed. I get to the paddle thing. My guy was 15 minutes late. I had to leave exactly an hour, so now my hour session is 45 minutes. I could have been annoyed with him. Then I go to speak on stage. They cut my session short by 10 minutes because everyone else was running late. I could have had the worst day ever in Dubai.
You chose to look at, yeah. Oh,
both those are 100% true.
Which is funny because you just described the same day.
The same exact day, no issue.
So you have a consciousness of the fact that you're conscious of this at your age. You're much younger than I am. The fact that you have that, you're in the top like 0.1 percentile of human beings. I'm telling you because I didn't have this, and I was honestly miserable most of my life. I was miserable because of the conditions of my early life and the situations, and I would only focus on my business, kind of the losses that I took, as opposed to the wins, where I felt the wins are normal. I'm supposed to be winning. Like, I didn't celebrate the wins, but I grieved the losses, and they really pissed me off.
Celebrate the wins.
Celebrate the wins. And listen, and by the way, it takes discipline to think the way that you do. Like today I had like an episode with like our landscaping, because I need to ask you who you use, but I don't
like my guy either.
Yeah,
sorry.
So I'm just having these, like, I had this like episode in poor Valeria. I kind of took it out on her, but and so I fall off sometimes, but we all do. But bringing yourself back to noticing, like really concentrating on the things that are good. So yeah, I agree with you, but I think that's a great takeaway from this podcast and it's a message that's reoccurring all over social media, but really concentrating on those positive things is important. Yeah, I agree.
We can talk for hours.
Are we going to talk about motorcycles?
I'll say this on the pod. Gary's been a big influence in my life, and sometimes by accident. I don't even know if you know this, but I remember I used to work at our first store at Revita, and you would come with, I believe it was the 911 at the time, and it was winter, and you're telling me like, I'm like, you drive a Porsche in the winter? You're like, it's all-wheel drive, brother. And I was like,
sounds like me. Yeah.
I was like, what a legend. Like, I love this guy, you know? Like, little things like that. I'm like, I want a Porsche, you know, it's possible. To being one of the major influences with why I moved to Miami, you know, to, you know, being able to protect myself now, and I shot guns for the first time with you. Like,
sorry, that was the first time you ever shot guns with? No,
that was I shot a gun, but I never I unloaded probably 100 rounds. I've never done that before. No.
I showed you the video of my new gun.
Yeah,
right?
it looked crazy.
Yeah.
So,
we're gonna go. We should go this week. I have a new buddy who I just met in Brazil, and he's into it.
So now we're all gonna go.
Yeah, he lives in my neighborhood.
I'm gonna get mine. Guys, Florida, we're allowed this stuff, okay? And now potentially, hopefully my mom's not listening, not influencing me, showing me that riding a bike is fun.
It's life. It's far more spiritual than that.
Spiritual.
But I just want to say to you, Valeria told me, she goes, stop telling Aaron to ride motorcycles. His mother's going to kill you.
She will.
She will.
She will. Yeah,
so
100%.
You gotta protect me from your mother, bro.
I will.
Please.
So before we cap off,
Yeah.
I always leave a little bit of an open end. Is there one thing that you would say to your younger self? So like picture, for whatever age, wherever you go to, and I say the young Gary, 12 years old, 10 years old, 15, whatever comes in. Some people it's like 4 years old, you know, walking in here, sitting here on the couch, and you got to share one message as foresight. What would be that message to little boy Gary?
It all worked out, kid. Don't stress. That's it.
Money. Gary, my man. I love you, brother.
You know what? I gotta say, my relationship with you has been such an enriching part of my life.
Oh, thank you.
Since you and I reconnected like a little while ago, when I basically like hammered on you to like, you better move to Miami. So I just want to thank you for your friendship. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you, bro. Goes both ways.
Awesome.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Founder to Founder podcast. And I have one favor, just one favor to ask. It's the only favor I'll ever ask from you. And if you liked what you listened to please like, subscribe, and please just leave a comment. Let us know what you think, how we can make it better. We are all in on delivering value to you. And all we ask in return is that you hit that subscribe. It goes a long way for what we're trying to build here. And as always, we post an episode every single Wednesday. So stay tuned, and thank you for tuning in.